Good evening. We'll call the meeting of the Mount Vernon City Council to order. It is 6 o'clock and we do have a quorum present. I appreciate everybody being in attendance tonight for our final workshop as we finalize our work for the budget. And thanks for attending from our guests as well. It's good to see everybody out. Finally got some rain today too, so I think everybody's got a little hop in our step. Rebecca's offered to give her invocation. Rebecca, thank you. All right, we don't have anybody signed up for citizen participation tonight, so we will move right on into our public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to hear evidence for or against the 2022 proposed tax rate of 0.58044. It is 6:02. We're opening the public hearing. I'll do that again, 6:02. The purpose of the hearing is to hear evidence for or against the 2022 proposed tax rate of 0.58044 and the 2022-2023 proposed budget. So I appreciate the work 2 weeks ago the council did. I know we've done a lot leading up to this. Of course, we've all experienced property values escalating throughout the county, and that brings obviously opportunity for us to adjust tax rates. Okay, so it's 6:04. I'll close the public hearing. Moving on to our items to be considered. All right, so we got discussion items. Just discussion is right. It's just discussion items. So Mayor, City Council, Administrator reports. So we've had a lot going on. This is our opportunity for just final discussions in each department of the budget. You know, we've all spent a lot of days and weeks on this, and I've had more follow-up time over the previous days with Tina and the team. I do want to say special thanks to the council members that have came in and pulled through the numbers. Mary, Sherilyn, Mark, you guys, some of you guys that have come and spent some time on it, I really appreciate the extra due diligence too.
So you have your budget there in front of you. We changed some items from the last meeting. We took out that $40,000 for the park lights, solar lights. We also took out the police car. We've added $80,000 more in the ad valorem tax on page 1.
How much more?
80,000. Apparently I didn't have the figure right. Me and Mary got together and we both decided it'd be $80,000 more. So it would be $796. It's on page 1. The ones I've highlighted, I've just kind of wanted to get the budget in the black because it was in the red of $175,000. I also took out the new police officer and his salary, the equipment and the salary. And that's over $108,000. I also took out the fire department generator, that's $17,000. And also the water plant, gate, what do you call that?
Sliding gate.
Sliding gate, and that was $12,000. So those are the major ones. I did up the, you can tell like on page 1, I upped the sales tax by $10,000 because we're already hitting $767,000. I think we'll make about $790 probably this year in 1 month.
Where's the sales tax collection?
And we have,
We're currently.
we have 1 more month, and I thought maybe $80,000 more. That's what we collected in September of last year, but we're coming in at about $100,000 each month. So I was kind of conservative on that, but I think it'll be $790. I did cut back a little on expenses. I took some out of each department. Like our, on page 3, that's administration. I took some out of building repair because we only used like $3,000 this year. I moved it from 17 to 12 just in case air conditioner or something goes out. I took down dues and it's been reduced. The only one I really had a problem with was street department. The contract streets, I had put it, that's on page 5. 5110008. I had 60,000 and I took it down to 50. depends,
Approximately what does it like a stop sign cost?
it's about, there used to be 50, and I think they may be about 75 now. But I don't know, I could be totally wrong. It depends on how many stop signs get stolen this year.
You
Six
see
thou-
on page 19, Rebecca?
Yeah. That's the explanation of capital. Yeah.
questions down there?
$400,000 for a water tower, but we've got $400,000 for a water tower on page 18 as well.
Yeah. It's an expense. So this is the money coming in, and that's the money going out.
All right, so I see 687 coming out and $1 million going in.
I'm sorry,
Is
where?
that on another line?
It's on page 20. 5170021. Because you have the water towers out of water, Belt Press would be out of sewer. And we just hope a bid comes in cheap. We haven't decided. They,
So I don't know that a decision's been made on exactly which belt press it is. What we added to it to come up to that number was basically installation, modifications to the building if necessary and things like that. So there was a little bit more that we added just to cover unknowns if nothing else. So, you still got a chance of coming in less than that. But the reason for the unknown part of it is we've got a belt press that, that was demoed that works, but we want to look at other options to see if our operating costs can be reduced, so in the long run you come away with a better product. And the operations as well as the disposal of the sludge. So all of that needs to be weighed into account to figure out what's the best option. We are seeing a little bit of break in prices, which is encouraging at least.
our projected, funds for the years is,
That's cash balance.
oh, that's cash balance. So cash on hand is 2,594,564
As of October.
as of October.
It's not in
It's
this
not.
packet.
Up or down?
You're confusing me. Yes.
I'm getting that, and
You're always gonna have to leave 3 months worth of money out there in case of an emergency or disaster or whatever.
Yeah, but that,
I mean, we're talking $2.6 million.
Yeah, but you, Hmm.
all funds, I mean,
Yeah.
as of
but you're
October
seeing, like, on, the distribution fund, which that, we spend about $1 million every quarter.
And 320,346. We are projected to go higher.
But even if we've got in a quarter, you go meet some of our obligations and not run ourselves short.
Yes, you could. I think we always carry 6 months. I think that's what the auditor has always said. We carry about 6 months in case. You never know. If there's a tornado or something, yeah.
Do we know what is in the equipment fund, what that balance is?
I did, remember we did 3,600 out of every department, and I did raise it to 5. So I think it was, And this year I didn't take any out of the equipment fund, you know, last year I think we bought a sewer machine out of there and, a mower. This year I didn't have to take any out. I did, and this is for, generators, pumps at the lake and the dam. And I think there was one more thing.
What's the
That equipment fund's $120,000, $120,407. We just started that this year and it was $10,000. We moved over there and yes, that's including that 10,000. And I did budget it, that,
Yes, I saw.
yes, I put their own line item that it, one of them's equipment fund. You can see on page 31, one of them says fire department truck, and then the other one's just the transfer in. That'd be the $40,000 from each department.
Right, but the accumulating balance, are we?
Yes, we will. I mean, in the computer, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That goes back to last year's work where we insisted on putting that line item to work and getting disciplined on the save.
How many years would it take to recover $1 million for this EDC?
About three, what I'm looking at.
30-ish. So furthermore, what would we have left if they take the $1 million? So here's the other problem, and you're well aware of this, Mr. Mayor. We have a special project right now that we're trying to get closed and done. And there's been conversations that I'll let Mr. Sanchez elaborate on when I'm done about thinking that you're going about this to some degree the wrong way. A water tower, I get it. We do the matching grants and all. But a developer comes in here and a developer uses private funds and knows that they have to come in here and actually spend that money towards the infrastructure and stuff like that and downline as well. Additionally, it's done with private funds and by private people that gets done in 6 months versus 6 years or however long it takes cities to get things done. You're fixing to deplete what I think is one of the best EDC boards you may have had in this city for a long time. Additionally, we bring on a consultant and he's actually doing his job and bringing on a big development that we have an opportunity to partake in, and you're fixing to eliminate our ability to do that. So you're fixing to eliminate our ability to contribute to that so we can still have funds to take care of the other things that may come up in front of the EDC. And if you'll look at it, I don't know if you have my budget there. We contribute already $20,000 to Main Street. We contribute $10,000. I may have it reversed. About 30. Facade. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, I don't really, honestly, and this is probably my fault. I don't really know why we contribute to those, but to be robbing us, and I'm just going to call it what it is, of $1 million and preventing us from the whole reason we got a consultant in the first place was to bring these developments to us, and to take that away from us and to take our opportunity away that's sitting right in our lap and is ready to close on. If you take that away from us, I don't have a need for Mr. Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez can leave because there's no reason for him. So we haven't had a consultant before. We haven't had somebody with the talents that he has to bring these kinds of things. And now here we are on the precipice of being able to do it, and you're fixing to take everything away from us to be able to make that project work. And again, we're a small town. I think it could have been communicated a little bit better than, as opposed to just popping $1 million on there and we'll just wipe it away from the EDC. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth, and I'm just going to tell you, I ain't happy about it. And I think you're diminishing the opportunities that we have, and I think that you've disrespected a great board that you've got right now. And that's all I have to say. Go ahead.
So Mark, I do have a question. You're
Yeah.
gonna close on a property.
Do what?
You're closing on a property for the EDC,
It's under contract.
but you've not came to the EDC and had a project that came to city council to vote on approval.
So that's coming up.
It's the
And
process.
you know that, and it is a process.
Mark, it's the only process. It's through public meeting, public hearing, and a project that comes to city council to be voted on and heard publicly. We can't
So,
close on a property.
We're not closing on property. It's in a trust right now under Mr. Sanchez's company. So no one's closing on it yet until we get the proper approval. But there's been a process that's got us to this point, and our process had to take its place before we could come and do what we needed to do as city council
I want to be clear, that's a process that took place privately.
with our EDC board.
I don't think so. I attend your meetings. I've not heard a public discussion or hearing around buying a property.
You're saying that you don't know that this was taking place.
I know that you guys are negotiating on our property. It's not at our EDC. We haven't had a public hearing at our EDC. We haven't had a vote. You've got board members here. I mean, I'm just saying, we haven't had anything come to us to vote on. I think it's real interesting, but we've not gone through that process.
A project.
Wow.
Viking.
It was, it was brought up here at this podium just now. No.
We're in the process, is this staying on or do I have to push it again? We're in the process of making this happen. It's not something that happens overnight. You know that as well as I do. There's been negotiations that our consultant has had to try and get this thing put together. There's been snags and more snags, and now the thing is starting to come together, and then you're going to see the process that takes place afterwards of coming to you and getting it approved in the public forum and everything else. But right now, everything's been under executive session because we didn't know that it was going to get done. And in a real estate deal, you know as well as I do that a lot of times, sometimes these things don't get done, and it's not something that you want to get in public forum until it does, at least to the point that we can.
I just want to be clear that to this date, what's been done has been done privately.
In executive session.
So y'all did a contract and closed in
We did not
Mr.
do
Sanchez
anything.
as a trust in an executive session?
We did not do anything. Mr. Sanchez is a consultant under Sanchez Consulting.
That's what I want to be clear here. That's a private transaction. Mr. Sanchez, would you, I just want to be clear. I hope that this is something that can be a good project and we can get behind it and support it. Today,
Well, you can't if you're taking $1 million from us.
we're not taking money from the EDC. The EDC is part of our city's government. It's a city council. The EDC, y'all's objectives and priorities should align to ours. So that's we're not taking anything.
Which they do. And what we're trying to do as a city, if we want to bring in development, we've got the guy to do that now, and now you're taking that opportunity
No,
away
we're not.
from us.
No, we're not. I would like to hear from Mr. Sanchez. So
All right.
just in all fairness, because it is very interesting what's
You want me to
working,
stay up
but
here,
we've
or-
got a process too. So yeah,
You want me to stay here?
you can. You can.
I can't stand for very long, but I'll stay as long as I can.
Yeah, sit down.
I'm good. I'm good.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So, as we have discussed probably 3 months ago, 4 months ago, with council as well as EDC in the visioning meeting that we had in discussing kind of goals and objectives and the good, the bad, and the ugly and opportunities of land banking. With that in mind, I presented to the EDC several different opportunities, 3 to be exact, land banking opportunities in executive session because we had not moved forward. I had not been given the guidance or direction by the EDC at that point to do anything. I gave them options. With that process as well, as you can imagine, if the government says, or if anybody says, hey, I want to go look at that piece of property and there's significant interest, price just goes up. Hence why, this is why we handle these things in executive session, relative to strategy and really kind of starting the process. One of the properties I ultimately recommended against moving forward to because the private development was already moving forward with the acquisition of that property. And so the strategy was still correct, but ultimately the government didn't need to get involved because the private side was already taking care of it, moving forward, assembling land in order to do a commercial development. There were 2 additional options, and then I presented both of those. The EDC gave me the guidance to say, yes, continue to move forward, research, see what can be done. Can we actually acquire properties within certain budget ranges, et cetera? The EDC is not under contract with anybody. That would not be appropriate because it hasn't come to your body. So what we did, as we oftentimes do, we put the property under contract as a private matter. You're absolutely correct, with the understanding that if this strategy was to move forward, and the council had the money in order to move forward and the will and desire to move it forward, we would just assign the entire transaction over to the city for the city to actually close on the property and move forward with the strategy. At that point, this has not happened. Pending budget, pending goals, pending infrastructure, all the things that you've relayed to us, right, and to me specifically as well. And so ultimately, it really comes down to, does the city have the money to execute those strategies? And if it doesn't, or if it doesn't want to, then that's also a choice too. But that's where it stands. Does that clear it up for you, sir?
It does, but it is a public meeting. I want to be very clear. It's a private transaction.
At this point, that's absolutely correct. It is a private transaction, but the goal was for it to be a private transaction, to be transferred to the city of Mount Vernon if they so chose and
If they so
desired
chose.
for land banking purposes. just like Mount Vernon Industrial Foundation does, just like other EDCs do, in order to execute and move forward with certain strategies having to do with economic development. That's pretty common. But at this point, it is a private transaction. Yes, sir.
Yep. I just want that to be real clear. That's a critical piece here. There's been no public hearings at EDC. There's been no public discussion at EDC. And there's been nothing at City Council formally either. So I just want to make sure we're clear for a public meeting. This is a private matter currently that you've brought to the EDC.
Yes.
Currently in your own trust.
Yes.
And again, I want to be clear about this too. We've talked about this over our last lunch.
Yes, sir.
As a consultant for the EDC and having a private matter that you're transacting in your trust, that is something for us all to get our head around, okay? It's something that I want to make sure that there's a clear line in the sand that EDC matters and consulting work, that there's no gray area in between your trust and investments in that matter.
Absolutely.
So it is something that I'm going to be very clear on that again.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There cannot be a crossover from private, public.
That's correct.
And that's something I want to be real clear. We've not had public hearings. We've not heard I've heard the framework, which was really interesting. You got to put meat on that framework because the detail around it we've not heard.
I understand that.
And I know those things are complicated and it could be really interesting. I do want to hear it, by the way. So don't let me be misunderstood in that either. I want to hear it, but I want to hear it at the right time and in the right fashion. I don't want to hear meetings happen on doorsteps. I don't want to hear meetings happening around town. I don't want to hear I had a meeting here and then I had a meeting here and then questions are showing up at City Council that's evident that there's meetings happening outside of the right fashion. So
the only thing that's
I'm going to soapbox on that a bit.
That's fine.
I want to be very clear on that meetings happen in the right fashion.
At this point, all the discussions on strategy and how to create that framework have been in executive session, and it has not encumbered the city and has not violated any of the city's processes, except for the fact that the guidance of here's a strategy, this is how it works, here were 3 options. One is off the table because the private side is doing it. We don't need to get involved. The other 2 fit in line with all of the other goals and objectives we've been discussing. And so we moved forward. I was given guidance to move forward in order to try to put that structure together for it to ultimately be presented to the city as a whole for execution or not. Ultimately, it's your choice. It's your execution or not, given the other priorities and goals that you have.
I think the way I'm understanding this is we've had a couple workshops, collaborative workshops.
Yes, sir.
Where we went over everything.
Yes, sir.
And I may be wrong, but it's my understanding that this falls in line with what we've been talking about doing.
That's correct, sir.
And so that's where, in some conversations I've had, I'm just like, okay, do we have any other options to do this? Because it's almost like, to me, this is a last resort option. So there's, I think, multiple other opportunities to try to get some of this money. And some of this money isn't even money that we're going to spend right now. It's maybe money. So that's why I'm wondering, why are we putting in maybe money in the budget when we may not need it? Because we may not get the matching funds, which we don't need it. In the meantime, maybe it gives this thing you're working on time where you can come talk to us about it, and we may have the money at that point, and we get it in a different fashion. But it's my understanding that the options that you're bringing us, that you talked in the workshop about, are off the table if you don't have this money to do this with, and we have it in the budget to do something else with.
So to be clear, thank you, Mr. Hulson, but to be clear and really to reiterate the mayor's point, regarding the budgetary discussion, I have no say-so in it whatsoever. I don't even have an opinion on it, right? Regarding the options and how they came about, that's absolutely correct, Mr. Huddleston. We identified, well, if these are the things that are goals, or these are the things that we've identified as challenges that we need to overcome, then these are strategies as to how to go do it. But ultimately, it comes down to having the money to execute those plans, whichever plan that is. If you don't have the money, then you're not playing that. You're not advancing that strategy. But ultimately, that's the hard stuff that you guys have to deal with. Whether or not you have the money or not because of the decisions you make, it's It's entirely outside of my purview. My purview is to bring you those options and then challenge you to say, what do you want to do? Which is what I did to EDC.
How much revenue do you expect that to bring into the city, and how much?
Yeah, and also in defense of like what the mayor just said, I think that that's not a fully cooked discussion, at least in this juncture, especially since it's a budgetary meeting, because we would get off topic. It would be something that I would be glad to brief if the mayor and council at the mayor's discretion, but ultimately, we've all discussed the options and the strategies, and now we're just trying to implement them if at all possible. I'm sorry for the non-answer, but
And I want to clarify too, there's not funds that we have in the EDC to go towards matching funds for a grant. We don't have a grant we're going after. We got a water tower that needs fixed and a belt press we gotta buy somehow, okay? Those are infrastructure. Our sewer plant doesn't work. We're overrunning it. Lanny, you're here tonight. We've gotten a fine every year for the last 2 years, 3 years now. We have to deal with our sewer plant. We can't ignore it. It's infrastructure. It's part of how we grow, right? So you've got to be able to manage it. And we got a water tower that's over 15 years or so out of date. You lose the water tower, I think that cash in the general fund would be gone. So $2 million ain't much money, $2.5 million, whatever that is. It's 3 months worth of operating you have to have. There's another 3 months there. If we lose a tower, we got problems. So I am gonna be, I wanna make sure that this town, especially the folks that are on this council that live in this town, I wanna know that water's coming tomorrow. I wanna know that our sewer system can handle it.
Mr. Mayor,
And by the way, I love what you're doing. So this is good, because you're hyper entrepreneurial, and that's why I liked you. You're good. I wanna hear
At the end of the
I do wanna
day,
hear it.
I'm here to give you options,
Yeah.
but not on budget. I mean,
This-
that's
this-
you guys.
So what I was gonna say is thank you. We do wanna hear it, but the
I'm
the
gonna sit
million-
down because now you're
have a sit,
now
have a
you're
sit, have a
moved
sit.
on
Yeah,
off
have a
of
sit. You're
what
good.
I could discuss.
You're good. Thank you, Martin. I just want to have one last piece there, though, is that the $1 million isn't spent tomorrow, okay? So we're saying that the $900-something thousand is what it's going to cost us to do that. We're going to go borrow money and raise our tax rate to the citizens, which is not feeling good. We just had to go up. We'd like to have gone down more than we just did. We couldn't. We can't afford to do it. We want to do it as we already are. So there's money to be borrowed, and I promise you it's not palatable to anybody sitting up here right now, but we're going to have to find a way to do it. $1 million sitting there is a line item for capital expenditure potentially, easily can be an EDC budget amendment that becomes money for a project. That money's not gone. We got a budget to approve. I need to make sure that we've got a budget approved that has us taking care of infrastructure issues that are critical. This isn't something we're doing just because it feels good. It's critical. So that it is the city's money. It is a half-cent sales tax that goes in to fund the EDC. EDC is there to align to the objectives and priorities of the city council. That's what we have an EDC for. Right now, we got a $1.6 million that just keeps growing, and we're not a bank. Our EDC is not a bank. And as it is, some of these things should have been dealt with in the past, and we're trying to find a way to fund it. So the money doesn't get spent tomorrow. We gotta go out for bids on a water tower. The belt press may take months and months. And if there's something, by the way, that can be presented with meat on that plan, where this council can go, aha, now this sounds good. We could have a budget amendment at EDC, and that money can get allocated accordingly. We got a budget to approve in 2 weeks.
Next meeting.
We've got to take care of business here for one. There wasn't an EDC budget turned in, so it was after the fact. It was after the fact. Yeah, so you didn't have a public hearing for a budget for the EDC, so we had to move forward with a budget. It's fine, but facts are facts. We had to put a budget together for the EDC because we didn't have one presented from a public hearing. But the money's not gone. We can still hear the plan. That plan needs to come together quick because y'all been working on it for several months, and I've not heard a detail other than the framework, which is interesting from a framework standpoint. But we got to have detail come to that so we can make an educated decision. And at that point, we can always have a budget amendment to the EDC and allocate that money towards a project. I promise you it can happen in that fashion, and that's a fashion it can happen and would.
Oh, that's brighter green. So, I mean, I don't want anybody to get the idea that we're a team here with the EDC. I tell you all the time, I serve at y'all's behest, but I also want to make clear too, this is not, and I may be speaking out of turn because I too am not familiar with my governmental rules here, but this is a public-private partnership where we get that money back and then some. So let's say we give the money to the developer and go in half on a project. That money is able to come back to us in a matter of just years, just several years, to where we get that money back and then some for participating in the project. So it's not like it's lost money. We not only get the development for the city, but we also get our money back out of it too. And so that's why, we've got a professional, and by the way, I'm sure you've noticed I'm a financial advisor, and that's why he gets paid the big bucks for doing this, because he spoke a lot more eloquently than I can on the subject. But
can I ask, how do we get money back? I don't understand.
come on. Come on down, you're the
Mr.
next
Saxon.
contestant.
So, let me try to answer the question and then also implore, Mr. Mayor, I think the solution to this part of the discussion is an executive session to be able to explain all of this, that meat with the bone. Mr. Saxey, I know, tried to reach out to coordinate a meeting with the attorney, and then the attorney was on vacation, and then we tried to coordinate another meeting prior to this meeting so we could kind of all come together.
I
But
won't be clear on that. That was a Friday and asking for a Monday meeting.
no, that was the second meeting.
Or that was a Monday asking for a Friday night meeting.
Oh,
I'm just saying, meetings are
Yes.
planned
No.
not within 48 hours when you're talking about getting our Dallas attorney together. I want to be careful there.
completely understand, sir. I am not implying whatsoever that nobody has had intent or interest, as much as scheduling is always a challenge, especially when you have folks from different parts, and then the summer and vacations. It's a challenge. So we're trying to work through that process to be able to get to that point. To answer Ms. Rose's question, the reality is it's a lot more complicated in that in this strategy that I laid out, there's two parcels that are in question here. We have a developer who will pay for one, the EDC pays for the other. The developer will end up paying for both of them in a structured public-private partnership, but it takes time to structure all these things. And as a part of doing that, so the EDC would get its money back, but part of that would also be that the EDC would just get a premium as well for having participated in this structure. That's the simplest way I can talk about it without getting into further detail. So at best, what we can do is continue to try to see if we can't schedule a time where we can get into the details of all of this, if time permits, on trying to get that deal established.
That's different, but again, I want to reinforce, that does not kill the opportunity to hear a public-private opportunity from this project at all. Doesn't at all. So I mean, we're game to hear it. It's got to be done in the right format, and we got to plan meetings further out. If we want to have an executive session, the next meeting is in 2 weeks. That's going to be hard to do it at a budget meeting, I think. We
Right.
could,
Scheduling's always a challenge.
but we need to plan it and do it appropriately, okay? It needs to happen quick. This is something that y'all's project's been talked about all over town. So the exec session is, not just like right now we're talking about without detail, but there's detail out there. We really need to decide if there's something there that we can move on it pretty quick. Because I keep having people ask about it, and I'm like, I can't answer questions about a project I'm not abreast of. So that is, I want to hear it. We want to hear it. On the cash side here, to Sherilyn, you had good questions there, and on the timeline, Lanny, that it could take phases, right? So I mean, some of that money is not going to get spent potentially this year either if phase 3 is in the 24 budget, right?
Just to answer your question, I pulled up the email. That's the time.
And that wouldn't be going out for bids anything.
Right.
That's the one they really want.
Well, that's the one we demoed.
That's the one you demoed, and that's
And
kind of
we-
one they
we
want.
liked
But
it.
we had talked about, Lanny
There's
hadn't
other
seen the
companies out
specs
there
or
that
anything
we're
on it.
discussing with
Yeah.
Lanny, looking at and everything
And that's why we kind of went out for bids. They can bid on it, and, and we can see which one we like the best. I mean, it doesn't have to be the cheapest one, but.
How much was this EDC estimating that they could contribute?
Well, that's two different topics, actually. Yeah, Martin's working on a special project, but from a contribution standpoint, there wasn't necessarily an offer from EDC for any amount necessarily. That was, we went to EDC. I don't have a problem with us taking cash from other areas. I don't know that it makes any sense when it's all one city. It's not like we're going outside of the city of Mount Vernon. The EDC is part of our, is part of your infrastructure opportunity. It is you. But again, it doesn't have to be spent from there either. I mean, you could use $500,000 of that or 450, whatever we have to use, and it could be some come from here. Absolutely.
So we could put that money back. I mean, I don't have a problem having it in the budget. But we can always take that from our cash and put it back if this project were to take off, correct?
It actually never leaves the EDC even until we pull from it. So like if we decide we're doing the belt press, for example, there could be the balance of that still sitting in EDC as cash at the EDC. We're not taking it out until it's needed. So that absolutely could be used towards a project potentially. It's sitting as a line item in their budget.
Unless it's spent.
Okay.
We don't
Sorry.
want them to.
All right, we don't.
So I want to understand, how do we access the reserve cash that we have out there? Do we do that through an amended budget when the time comes?
So then we can amend the budget at that time to get what we need if this
Right.
project's something we want.
Right.
If we put it in the budget, we're gonna go all spend it, and then we're gonna be, I mean, I don't know what this deal is they're working on, but I'd like to hear it before I commit money to something else.
Well, but like Mary said, if we leave it in the budget now, and if we have spent some or all of it by the time they come back with their thing, we can amend the budget and pull it from our reserve cash
And put it in the EDC.
and put it into the EDC.
Do we know that? We can do that. I don't think you I don't think you can do that. Right, but I think you can move money one way, but not the other way.
Your EDC funds have the discretion of being used for infrastructure into the city fund, so to speak. But your city funds, you don't have necessarily the same discretion to move over this way just administratively. You still can, but it gets more complicated in what you have to do. I saw you understanding this. I just wanted to clarify that from that perspective, Mayor.
So the only thing that makes sense to do at this point is if we've got money, it just depends on who pays what and when they pay it and when the bills come due. We got money. So what I would be comfortable with is this being 808 to 424. Leave the other 500,000 in the EDC. If the time comes we got to go back and get it or we got to get it, we've got money in our general funds. Then we can listen to their project. And the worst case scenario out of that is they've got $500,000 to go look for something else. But if they like it, we can't go get the money then to go do this if we put it in this budget.
Right. So how do we, for this budget, how do we access the cash that we have on reserve rather than impacting the EDC until we know what how their project's going to go?
I believe it's capital equipment.
Yeah.
But how do we pull that reserve cash into our budget as revenue?
Book up to the bank tomorrow and get it.
Okay, I have one, I'm just trying to figure this out, so, kinda like a puzzle. So, if the property was bought, let's just say if, that, the people that bought it would also be responsible for some infrastructure, correct?
I know nothing. I know nothing. I'm sorry, I know nothing.
Well, I mean, I don't know anything about it, I'm just,
I don't think you can.
Well, Rebecca, how do you know about that? That's what I'm getting at. These discussions that are taking place,
he just said it.
I'm just saying, how are we gonna pay for infrastructure? I didn't know we were gonna pay for infrastructure with it. I heard we get paid back.
Oh, I said that if a company came and bought that property, most companies work on infrastructure, correct?
I don't know. I know nothing.
Well, I
just
thi-
know
I
there's a
think you-
I know there's a private project taking place that may come to us as a public entity. And until that's presented formally, I don't know anything about it. But as far as clouding our budget discussion, I just gotta reiterate here, we don't have a public project yet. We have a private project that's not been presented to our board.
The only thing that I'm trying to get at is where the money, because we have infrastructure as well, so that's all I'm asking. And I just heard it here on the floor, so.
But I never got an answer to my question about how do we utilize or access the cash reserve that we currently have on hand to help fund this budget so that we don't deplete EDC.
This ego bullshit, and
signed it. And we're talking about maybe in phase.
I think that wraps our business for tonight. After much good discussion, I want to thank everybody for that deliberation. It was very good, very good. So I would look for a motion to adjourn so we can.
Motion.
Got it. Second. Second from Sherilyn. All in favor? Thank y'all.